Niger's top court has stripped the French ambassador of diplomatic immunity and ordered his immediate expulsion from the country as locals gather to demand Paris withdraw its troops. Thousands of Nigerians have flooded the country's streets for a second day, calling on French troops to go. Paris has refused to recognize the new military government that seized power in last month's coup. French President Macron also reiterated support for the ousted leader and endorsed ECOWAS sanctions as well as the bloc's possible intervention. We heard from people at the rally.
We are here to express our determination, our commitment and our devotion to getting the French military force and all their bases out of our country.
I think that today we will give a one-week ultimatum to France to get its soldiers out of Niger. Otherwise, next week we will bring together 3 million Nigerians. And if they do not leave our country, we can freely enter the base and march in peacefully, because there are lands that belong to Nigerians. They are not French lands.
We are seeing the inevitable and imperative departure of the French forces in accordance with the decision made by our legitimate authorities. Today we are here to say that the people of Niger are standing up more than ever, mobilized and determined to assume their revolt vis-à-vis this colonialist France, vis-à-vis this imperialist France.
What we want today is freedom for everyone. We don't want French bases anymore. We don't want France anymore. We really respect the French, but we don't want their system.
No bread for French troops deployed in Niger as part of military cooperation against terrorism. The pressure from the Nigerians is strong on them to demand their departure at all costs. The demonstration follow one another every day here with more determination, more hatred towards everything that is French. A desire to break down barriers here. Nigerians have never been so determined in the last 6 decades. Difficult to say what will be the outcome of this standoff. There is a spark in the Nigerian sky, a plan found by Emmanuel Macron determined to force his way, but at the opposite side there is a Nigerian army and its people decide to say no and no to the former boss. Mudi Musa, RT Niamey.
Now, Niger was hit by a coup back in July, becoming the latest country in the Sahel region to topple their Western-backed leader. Africa has seen a wave of military takeovers, with Gabon being the 6th country to see such changes in just the past 2 years. On Wednesday, a group of army officers seized power from President Ali Bongo, whose family had ruled the country for over half a century.
In order to ensure continued respect for the rule of law, good relations with our neighbors and with all the states around the world, and to promote the continuity of the state while demonstrating our firm determination to honor our international commitments, the Committee for the Transition and Restoration of Institutions has decided to reopen the land, sea and air borders with immediate effect as of 2nd of September 2023.
According to the French Minister of the Armed Forces, Paris has suspended its military cooperation with the Central African country following the coup. Meanwhile, Gabon's main opposition party has urged the rebels to return power to civilian rule. That's after the country's new leader promised a new constitution, warning there will be no rushed elections to avoid what he called past mistakes. RT correspondent Nolivu Yakunge brings us up to date.
We do know that the current crisis in Niger has really threatened the future of democracy in Niger and across the Sahel region. It has also created a moment of reflection for France about the effectiveness of its policies, as well as its future influence in Niger and other Western and Central African countries. As things stand at the moment across the African continent, people are even asking, is there still a place for France in Niger, or even in Africa?
I would say that there is a kind of hypocrisy behind this French behavior. Because if there is nothing suspicious going on, then why, despite the dissatisfaction of the citizens, is France refusing to leave? For me, there is something in the wind.
Look at what just happened in Gabon. It's proof that people are fed up with France. President Bongo told us to make noise. Yes, we're making noise. France must leave.
France was our colonizing country. It used us many times. In my opinion, France must understand the current regime. They must create a framework for dialogue to listen to each other, to find a solution.
Well, the dominoes of Western powers are falling apart, and they're falling all over Africa very fast. The fourth Western-controlled African country is in the middle of a coup to topple its current and corrupt Western-backed leaders. And that's exactly what we are seeing in Gabon. We are also told that the swearing of the general is expected to take place at the Constitutional Court in the next few days. You'd remember that a few days ago, no one knew where Ali Bongo was or where his family was. But as of late, we are aware of some sort of information.
Mr. Ali Bongo Ondimba is kept under surveillance, surrounded by his family and his doctors. The people concerned are arrested for treason against state institutions, massive misappropriation of public funds, organized international financial embezzlement, forgery, falsification of the signature of the President of the Republic, corruption, and drug trafficking.
And those claims are the claims that we've been hearing the past week. And France, of course, colonized Gabon in the late 19th century. It ruled until 1960. And during that time, France exploited Gabon's natural resources, even after they picked the president to rule the country, their own president to rule the country. And many say that president was a puppet of France. And that president was Omar Bongo Ondimba, whose son, the now president that we're discussing now, is Ali Bongo Ondimba, took over his father when the father passed away in 2009. That also tells us that Gabon has been under the same leadership, under one family leadership since the 1960s, and that family is still controlled by France and Western powers. Ali Bongo at the moment is calling on people to make noise and do something, basically calling on the people he had kept in poverty for decades and supported while he was enriching himself with the support of Western powers to help him. And those people are indeed making the noise, but it's not the noise that the president is asking for. It's the noise that they show as celebration for the freedom and independence that they are trying to achieve.
The coup d'etat has taken place was predictable. Ali Bongo was always tampering in the elections, so the military has taken power, and that agitated the Gabonese people.
The Ali Bongo page seems definitely turned. He is under house arrest. His relatives and collaborators are under surveillance by the junta.
For 64 years, we've had just one regime, a regime that has oppressed us. As Gabonese, we could no longer find the joy in living. We were lost. We were losing our values too. The country no longer gave us anything. Things we learned from our families disappeared. Thank God today we have the army.
France controls the pumping of Gabon's oil, and the uranium that comes out of Gabon goes straight into France to help it build its economy, to help it build its nuclear weapons and its nuclear power plants. France has 110 companies in Gabon. The US extracts half of its oil there, and the majority of people in those areas are living in absolute poverty. The amount of resources this country has is phenomenal. So no wonder Western powers and France fear the prospect of Africa kicking out Western influence out of Niger, out of Mali, out of Gabon, and all these other countries. At the Russia-Africa summit, President Putin did say that we want you to keep your resources. We want you to enjoy your own sovereignty and make partnerships and collaborations that you feel that are safe and secure. And then you have top European leaders saying that what needs to be done in these crises is for them to improve African policies.
The events in Africa, in particular in the Sahel, should be a wake-up call for us. In Niger, where they're waving Russian flags, singing anti-French songs, which shows that our soft power, our influence is much smaller than we thought.
The EU policy has failed and continues to go wrong. We need to start a dialogue with Africa again, and its representatives need to understand that we not only want something from them, but we can offer something.
No alarm bells have been ringing in Paris. Now Gabon has been able to get rid of its presidential puppet through the intervention of its military. Macron has once again compromised France. Africans are turning the page.
Niger and France have had close ties since Niger became independent from France in the 1960s, as well as Gabon. But Niger remains economically dependent on its former colonizer. Niger is one of those poorest countries in the world. We all know what French aid does to these countries. It really helps it keep tabs and control these countries. But it will then be very interesting, I must say, to keep an eye on all of this to see if ECOWAS will also see this as unacceptable, because we all know that the United Nations has already condemned these coups, the US and the UK as well. But on what basis? That is the question. Is it because of democracy, or is it just that it is a start of decolonization where Africans are really starting to see and recognize their worth at this point?
We spoke with a Gabon-based analyst who says that people of the Central African nations seek to take their fate into their own hands and free themselves from their colonial past.